Hello everyone, welcome to Dave Tries to Fix Stuff, the channel devoted to the repair, restoration, and resurrection of all things broken. I'm your host Dave. On today's inaugural episode, we're going to be working on this Yamaha DG80. It is one of the earliest of the emulating amplifiers out there. It's a pretty good sounding amplifier, to be honest with you. I'm not going to lie to you, even though it's an early amp. So picked it up for I think like $60 on Craigslist, something like that. It is working as far as the preamp is concerned. It turns on. It does the pots move and all that because the pots on this are actually motorized. So it when you bring up a new patch that's been programmed into this thing, the pots will turn motorized to the locations where they were set when the patch was saved. So it's a pretty cool design. As you can see, it's in pretty rough shape though. So this first episode here on this is going to be dedicated to trying to get the thing to actually put out sound through the speaker, because it has an effects send that sends a signal. It also has a line out that sends a signal, but there is no signal going into the speaker. So we're going to look at it and see if we can figure out what's wrong with it and get it fixed. So if you want to learn a little bit more about the process I'm doing on that, please stick around and we'll have some fun. Okay, so as you can see, like I said a little bit earlier, this amp has seen better days. It's definitely got its share of, you know, war wounds and battle scars and all that kind of stuff. It's missing every knob on it except for one. And the thing that stinks about these knobs is that they're D-shaft knobs, but they are 90-degree knobs. Is this thing on? Yeah, it is. Just making sure I'm recording right. They're 90-degree D-shaft, meaning that normally when you have a D-shaft like this right here, let's see if I can get this to focus in a little better. When you get a D-shaft like this one right here, the flat part of the D-shaft is normally 180 degrees away from where the pointer should be pointing on this thing. But these are 90 degrees, so like this one right here, you can see where the pointer is. I'll take that off, and you can see that the flat side is 90 degrees away from that. So trying to find these things it'll be a challenge to say the least, to try and get replacements on that. But plus we're going to have to get new caning and all this, or new cane grow cloth, because this thing has definitely seen better days. I'm also going to have to get one of these. But anyway, we're getting ahead of ourselves as far as that's concerned. The first thing we're going to worry about on this thing is actually to try to get this thing working again. And as I stated earlier, it's got a line out and it's got an effects loop, and both of these will send a signal out. And I'll show you a test a little bit later on to show that that is actually the case. We'll test the speaker. We'll test running a signal back into the return. I don't think the MIDI has anything to do with this. This is actually the external speaker jack. The speaker jack that belongs here, the guy told me is actually inside. We'll have to verify that. I don't think that's the problem. We will look up and see what is going on with the wiring of these things, and we'll see if we can figure out what the problem is. Alright, so what we'll do now is I'm going to turn this thing on. Got my little Frankencaster here. Nothing special, just something I put together with several different parts, but it is one of my favorite guitars that I've got. Plays really well. But I'm going to go ahead and turn this thing on, and I will run through a couple of patches on here so you can hopefully see the things turning, so we know what our baseline is as far as what's working on this and what is not. One thing I did realize when I plugged this in is that the 3-prong cord that is on this thing, the grounded prong is broken off, and that's going to have to be replaced. So that's a note to self kind of a thing. But we'll turn it on. You can see it comes up. Let's see here. We'll just bring up something else. I don't know. Do that. You can see there, right there, the gain cranks. Yeah. So they actually all moved at that point. So, but we can turn the output on. I'll crank the output, crank the input, because I know nothing's going to happen. I wouldn't normally do that, but we're skipping a couple steps here. But you can see, even says E1 in there. That shows we got an error going on. So, but you can see here that we've got signal going in to it, but we've got nothing coming out. So, let's try that one. The E1 is gone. I wonder what that was for. That was that was an error that has to do, I think, with the programming in this thing. So I'm gonna have to check that out too. But one step at a time. We got to get sound out of it before I start working on the preamp stuff. So anyway, you can see that there's nothing in here, nothing going on. But what I will do is I will actually hook the preamp up via the effects send into another amplifier, and we'll see what kind of signal we get present at that point. All right, I've got this little early 1970s Silvertone that I've had for years. That is a great little amplifier. We are going to use that as basically a power amp right now. There's my dog in the background. I've got a cable going into that, and the other end of the cable is right here. And we are going to, sorry about the shaky camera work, we're going to put that into the send of the effects loop, and we are going to see what kind of signal comes out of that. If there's a signal coming out of there, we should be able to hear this thing in this amplifier. So let me get this set up to where you can kind of see this thing, and then we'll go from there. Okay, so I've got everything hooked up here. This thing's on the twos of, oh, hello, duh. There we go. I'm going to pull up a different channel here just because. There we go, not quite so heavy, or not quite so loud. So I'm turning the output right here all the way up. It's the output going all the way up is not affecting the, which makes sense, it's not affecting the overall signal going to this amp because that's coming out of the preamp. This output should be how loud everything is going to the output. So turn up the gain. Let's try a crunch channel here. Alright, so it's obvious that the preamp is working. We have signal going to the send unit, from the send jack, and putting that signal into basically a slave amp, for lack of a better term. Shows that we are getting signal, so the preamp is working. So I think the next step will be to remove the chassis, start poking around in there and see if we can find, maybe we might have to trace the signal. I don't know if it's going to be a bad transistor or a bad FET of some sort, or any of the op amps in there that might be bad. It could be any number of things. So let's get in there and see what we can find. Now, okay, before I remove the chassis, I'm actually going to take the speaker here, and I'm going to test for continuity on the voice coil, because if for some reason this voice coil got blown, then that could be the reason why I'm not getting any sound. So if we, and this, all this is just a cable with a plug that plugs into the jack, obviously, and this is hooked up to the two leads for the voice coil up here on the speaker. So I can test on this thing and see if I've got continuity. It should show up, if this is an 8 ohm speaker, which I believe it is, it should show up as being probably in the 6.5 ohm range, and that will give us an idea of whether or not this thing is blown. So we've got this right here. So if we take this guy, and then I put that there. I'm trying to hold it with two hands, hold everything with two hands here, and it's not always the easiest thing to do. Actually, I can probably put this right there, would be easier. And then do that, and then I can touch this to here. Ooh, I think that was fine. You actually heard the a little. I don't know if that came up on camera, but the touching this thing to the lead to this thing actually made a little bit of a signal pass through the speaker there. So, but can you hear that? But looking at this thing, it's kind of jumping around there. Yeah, about 6.9, 7.1 right in there. Steady about 6.9. So, yeah, it's got continuity. So it's not the speaker that is the problem in this thing. It's going to be something that's going to be internal to the actual something in the chassis is messed up. So we will continue with taking the chassis out, and we will go from there. Missing here? Oh, yes, there is something I'm missing here. There is a. I can get it back with that thing over. There's a ground wire hooked up between the speaker and the chassis. Let's hold this thing in. Okay. this theoretically should just slide right out. There we go. Okay. Whew, that worked up a sweat. Okay, so we've got the chassis out, and we are looking at the board. There's a lot of wires and stuff in here, so we are going to have to go through all this. We got a battery here, you can see right there, that I can almost guarantee is going to have to be replaced if this thing's been out of service for as long as the guy said it has. I don't think this is going to focus. We'll try. Come on, it's macro. Yeah, it's not going to, but let's see. It is a CR2450 battery, but we're going to have to replace that. That's not going to be the source of our problem, but it is most definitely going to have to be replaced if we want to be able to save any future patches. So looks like we've got this board on top, which is the preamp board. I can see you got some FPGAs in here, chips, whatever you want to call them. I don't really care. But this is where all the computery programming stuff is on these things, and that thing looks like it's on a tray and has some screws in the back that are holding the tray up. That's going to have to come out. And then I've got a board down here which looks like the power amp board, so that's probably going to be the thing that we're going to have to check. And there's also looking at the back, there's also that MIDI board, or not the MIDI's up here, the preamp board, the line out and the effects loop are down below this top board. So there's going to be 3 layers of boards in there, and the problem could theoretically be on any one of them. So let me start taking this board out. I'm going to get that, because there's our, by the way, our missing speaker jack. I got to get that taken care of. I have to find some, because looking at that other one, I don't know if you can see all this. It's tough to tell on this camera with the screen I have, but it looks like there are, we've got one here. You can see that big black plastic washer there, and it looks like there's one on this side too. So maybe no, oh wait, right down here. Ouch! Sharp shit down here. There's one right there. So we got at least, maybe I'll find the other one in here. I'll get lucky. We got at least half of the washers we need for this thing. I'd be surprised if we'll find a nut for it, but at least I've got that. I can try and fabricate something else if I need to because the way this washer is shaped, pick it up again. You can see it's got like a ridge right here that looks like it's meant to fit in that hole, like that. The ridge right there goes into that hole. And if there's another one on the other side doing the same thing, it's meant to insulate that sleeve on that jack from touching the chassis. Although I don't think that would be a huge deal if it did. I don't think it's going to mess anything up. But either way, I'm going to have to do that. Like I stated earlier, I'm going to have to replace that. You know what? I'm not even going to bother replacing that cord. I'm just going to get a new. Instead of replacing the entire cord, which would be a big, huge pain in the ass because I'd have a lot of soldering and shit I'd have to do, I'm just going to get a new plug for the end of it. And I'll cut that old plug off and put a new heavy-duty one on there. So that part will be easy. But yeah, let me go ahead and get this preamp out of here and see what's underneath it, and then we'll start poking around and see what we can find. So. Okay, now before I remove the last two of these things that's holding this tray on, we're going to kind of see how these things are in here. So I have, first of all, I have a reference. I don't think it'll be very difficult to figure out where they go because all these wires are kind of bent, sort of, and they've had years of being bent in the spots that they're in. So if I just kind of like bring them up here and let them flop, it'll most likely kind of flop right where they're supposed to go. But just so I have a point of reference if I need it, I'm not disconnecting those. This is how it's going to go. So what I've got, let's see here. Okay. This one's not going to be a problem because this one's got a completely different type of connector. These are just like little slide Molex types. This one's actually got a clip on it, so I'm going to push that clip in. Boom. That one comes off easy. The rest of these should theoretically just pull right out. So, yep. Pull, pop, 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 pop here in the corner. That one's a little more stubborn because it doesn't have a whole lot of slack on it. Got to be careful not to pull out the connectors too. Then we got this, a little too good. This one I'm betting right here, that is your signal. Hopefully we won't have to trace it back this far. But no, that wouldn't be it. That wouldn't be the problem. Because that, I bet in that, yeah, that comes right under here. You can see there is a board down here that this thing plugs into. And that is where our input is on the front. So that's going to be our signal going from these front jacks to this board, this preamp board. Then that's not going to be our problem because we're getting signal going out from the preamp board to the effects send. So I know that that's not our problem, but that needs to come out. So back to unscrewing the board. I'd say just so we can get a decent look at this thing. Just a, tray on the bottom kind of a thing. There's the MIDI connections going to the back here. So that's pretty straightforward. So we'll put that over here for right now. And just as I had suspected, there is the preamp out board. This is going to be like this is an A&R board. That's what they're calling it. Yeah, so you're going to have the return and effect send here. This is the XLR out that goes out there. This is the level for the XLR. This is the blend for dry signal versus wet signal coming back in. Ooh, and you know what? That's something I never did. I forgot to hook up I was going to hook a guitar up to this to show you the return here, because this is the return. I was going to hook a guitar up to the return and just see if I could get a signal to go from the return to the power amp, but I forgot to do that on film. But I did do that. That was one of the things I did test when I first got it, was to see if I could get a signal to go from the return to the thing, and it didn't work. So sorry I didn't film that, but I'm not gonna do it now because then I have to put everything back together before I have anything fixed, and I don't like doing stuff like that. So anyway, we'll continue to take this thing off by getting this board out of here, and we'll go from there. Okay, and a little more filming. This is how that bad boy was right in there. Got that 4 right there. This one I want to get this more than anything. Sorry about that. This has got a pink wire to the left and a yellow wire to the right. That's how I'll know which one of those go where. Even though one's a 3-prong and one's a 2-prong, so I doubt I'd get it mixed up. But I just want to get it on record. Alright, although I do want to note, I'm putting this aside for right now, only because I want to note that the problem that we have with this particular amplifier might be on this board. It does have some op amps in here that I may have to look at. I mean, inspecting all of it's doing a close inspection of all of the electrolytics and stuff, all the regular capacitors, just basically all the components. I'm not seeing anything that immediately stands out. A lot of dust in here, Jesus. That guy that sold this to me was a really nice guy, but just with the condition that this thing was in, it doesn't seem like very much care was given to keeping this thing in good shape. So I'm really not surprised that this thing had a problem. But nothing's jumping out at me on the component side. Let's see what we have. Sometimes you've got, it could be something like a broken solder joint or a cold solder joint or something like that that could be causing a problem. But whoever did the soldering on this looks like they did a pretty good job on this one. I don't see, a lot of times when you have these board mounted jacks where something goes in and goes out, especially if it's one that gets plugged in and plugged out all the time, like input jacks. These, which are effects loop ones, I wouldn't expect it as much on, only because on an amplifier like this, you're not always going to be using a whole lot of effects because it has built-in effects on it. So I don't expect a whole lot of input, output, jacks or plugs going into this thing. So I don't expect there to be much of a problem with the solder joints. But that is something always to look at, is to see if there's any problems with the joints on this thing being knocked loose from stuff being plugged in and unplugged constantly. It weakens these joints. But I'm not seeing that on here. So I'll put this aside for now, but I'm not thinking that the problem is on this board as of yet. So, but we will come back to that. So, see if anything jumps out at us on this guy. Probably going to end up having to pull the board, get a better look at all this stuff, like all the soldering. Oh, fuses. Hello. Now that I've taken everything off of here, fuses. I need to check those and make sure that none of those are burned out. That'd be good. That'd be fun if that ends up being the problem. There's another one tucked down in there too. Right there. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fuses it looks like. Also we have a relay down there. But in looking at this stuff, I'm not seeing anything that jumps out at me. I can't really visually inspecting these things. These fuses, they look to be okay. No, that one might be burned out. Yeah, I think that one's burned out right there. I wonder if that's what happened. If this thing came out and grounded itself, and that because it got grounded, blew that thing out. It basically shorted the whole circuit and blew that. I wonder which one is that. That is FZ304. Let me. I got the. I got the schematic here. Let me look up what FZ304 is and see what that does. Okay, so look at this. So we have, hopefully this is going to focus on here. I hope this is focused enough. You have FZ304. This is the fuse that's actually burned out. Now, looking at this, you can see that this comes down and actually feeds the bridge rectifier right here. Okay, coming off this bridge rectifier, because there's a couple of different rectifiers in this circuit. But looking at this one, you can see I've got a 2200 microfarad filter cap here at 160 volts. So this is getting this is going to have plenty of power coming through it, plenty of voltage coming through it to basically push a lot of stuff. So my guess is that we still got to follow that thing, but I'm thinking at this point that this is actually supplying all of the voltage for our power transistors, the ones that are actually pushing the speaker. So we have it's coming right here. So let's follow this. We're coming up here, goes over this way, up to here, still coming over. See, it's actually coming down here and is supplying power to this transistor, coming over here and supplying power to this transistor. And these are all signal boosters right here. These are boosting the signal, it looks like. And then, when it comes down here, if you will look, so this power right here is coming down and is coming right over here, and is actually the power. Oh, somebody's calling me. I'm going to put this on pause. Alright, where were we before we were so rudely interrupted? Anyway, you've got the power's coming in here, and this is actually supplying the power, all the voltage, to this main transistor. This is the big boy right here. We have two of them that are working pretty much in tandem. You have the one up on top and then this one right here. But they are both being supplied by that exact thing where that same fuse that blew on us. This guy right here. So I'm going to go test that thing just to make sure that it is still working. And if it's not, we may actually have just gotten lucky and just have to replace this fuse, and then this whole kit and caboodle will actually start working. So I'm going to go test that real quick, and we'll see what happens. Okay, so I have a couple of fuses here. The first one on this side is one that I know to be good. So we're going to test this one real quick so that we can see what actually happens when you test these things and they're good. All I'm doing is using my my trusty multimeter, and I have it on the continuity setting, which when you do that and you put the two leads together, it's going to sound like this. Do you hear that? So when I put it against these two, I should be getting the same reading. Okay, so let's try it. So good. So we know that one is a good fuse. Also, make sure, you can see I'm testing on wood here. Make sure when you're testing these things that you're not testing them on metal, because I'll show you what happens when we do that in a second. So, but we'll try to put this one together. This is the one that's in question. See? Don't hear anything. That's because this fuse is actually blown. And if you look at it really closely, which I'm sure it's kind of tough to see in this light, but you can kind of see some electrical char in there. So this thing actually has blown in here, and that is not a good fuse. So that will have to be replaced. This is actually a 3 amp fuse, which I believe I have some 3 amp fuses in there. So that one's going to get replaced. But let's, I've got this wrench right here. Let's put that right on here. This is why you don't want to test these when you have on metal to see if they're good or not. So we know this one's no good, but if you put it on metal, it's not really coming up right, but it's still coming up as good because the metal is actually conducting from one end to the other. So That's why when you test these things, you need to make sure you test them on non-conductive surfaces. So when you do that, you're not getting a false reading that it's a good fuse. So let me go ahead and pop a new 3-amp fuse into here. I'll also get this other fuse that's still working right here back into its spot because I pulled that for the test purposes. I also tested all the other fuses and they were all good. So this might actually be what the problem was, and if it is, I think that's awesome. I don't have to go tracing signals and all that. So let me get this replaced and see if I can tie this thing back up, and we will take it from there. Okay, so those are all there. That's all in there. You know, I also need to find, before I get the rest of this in here, I need to find something to tie or to get this speaker jack hooked back up. So let me go look in my stash of junk and see what I can find that will actually work on this. Alrighty, so I found these things. I don't have anything like this guy right here, this plastic thing, but I did find some insulating washers from another jack that I was just, I've got so many little bits and pieces and stuff that this should take up width-wise about the same as what this is. So I can put these on the back side of the washer, of the jack, and once it goes through the hole in the chassis, this one should sleeve up pretty well and actually hold it in place. So it's still going to be able to perform the same basic function of not having it touch the, although I don't see a reason why it matters, but the designers obviously had a reason for doing it like this. So I'm going to try and replicate that as much as I could. If the sleeve touches the chassis, it's just grounded. I mean, of course, there's people that talk about ground loops and stuff like that, but this is an end signal to a speaker, so I don't see this as that ground loop having much effect on the overall signal. But again, that's the way the designers did it, so I'm going to try and keep with that as much as possible. Put these on the back side of the jack before it goes to the chassis. Put that one on the outside, and that should still keep the sleeve of the jack lined up and not touching the chassis itself, and then it also will look just like the other jack that's in there. So we'll do that. Okay, there we go. Looking at it, you can see, can't tell the difference between the two. Looks like the way it did when it came out the factory. I'm just that good. So, all right, we'll get everything else put back together and see if this thing fires up and actually works. Okay, moment of truth here. I've got my Frankencaster again. Got it plugged into this guy. I've got I just have it again setting on top of the cab with the speaker plugged into the back. The ground that I had that's coming off the speaker itself, it just has been clipped with an alligator clip. I don't know if you can see that up here, but I got an alligator clip to the chassis in the hopes that it will, if there are any problems, everything will ground and I won't get electrocuted. So that's my hope anyway. But we'll go ahead and turn it on and see what we get. I have the output turned all the way down right now, so we'll see what happens when we get this turned on and working. We'll see what we get there. I don't hear anything yet. Oh! Oh, yes. Man, that's loud. I'm going to crank it real quick. That is loud. It is working. It sounds good. Let's Here, let me turn the output all the way down so I get a nice input on the trim pot. Okay. So it's working. Made you look. All right, that is awesome. Let's see if we can call anything else up. Now, I'm going to go back to that number 11 and recall that and see if I get that E1 message again. Because I'm wondering if the E1 had something to do with the output not actually working. Oh, there it goes. Look at that. E1. So there's something on that. I don't know. You know what that might also be? The E1. That might be, because that number 11, this is me postulating right now. I don't know what has been saved to what on this thing as far as which channels on here are original factory set channels and which ones have been programmed by someone else. That E1, I will look that up in the manual, and that might actually be the battery. So that's going to be my guess on that. And the reason it doesn't show up on number 1 or 2, which I haven't looked at really any other channels, the reason it might not be doing that is because those are factory channels. So I'm also going to read how to reset this to factory settings, and I'm going to do that first and foremost and see what all this stuff means. So we'll tackle that right after these messages. So be right back. Alrighty. So I looked up in the owner's manual a couple of things. First one, the E1 is actually not the battery. If I had an E6 on here, that's the battery being bad. So number one thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to remove this battery and I'm going to test that to see how much voltage I'm getting out of it. Because if I'm still getting a decent amount of voltage, then obviously there's no reason to replace it. But we'll see that what that comes up with. E1 is actually a motorized pot error. What it's saying is that when I'm bringing up whatever patch I'm bringing up, there is a motorized, one or more motorized pots is not going to where it's supposed to be going for that patch. That could mean that the motor's out. It could mean that the sensor that detects whether it's out is messed up. It could be any number of things. So that might actually be something that we follow up on this at a later video, only because regardless of what the problem is, more than likely I'm going to have to replace a pot in here, and that means I'm going to have to order it and all that stuff. And I can venture a guess that finding one of these motorized pots is not going to be easy. That may be something we have to live without. So, but one thing I did also look at is that if I hit lead 1, hold lead 1 and recall at the same time and turn the thing on, that will reset everything to the factory settings, and that's what I'm going to actually do right now. So let's see what this comes up with here. So lead 1, recall, and then there we go. So now we're back at factory settings. So I don't know. That's lead, clean. I'm just kind of going through all these. Okay, so a couple of things. First, I took the battery out and tested the battery. Battery is putting out a little over 3 volts, and it's a 3-volt battery, so battery's fine. There's nothing wrong with the battery. But one thing I did, even after resetting everything to the factory settings, I actually put in adjusted everything on here, got it to a tone, if you will, with all the controls at a place where I know that the controls are functional and will work. And then I went to utilizing the instructions from the instruction manual, from the owner's manual. I went through the steps of trying to save it to that channel 11, which at first it appeared to be saving it correctly, but then after I took my finger off the store button, everything like the gain, which was up around, which is right about here on the setting, reset and went all the way back down to 0. And it's tough to see without the knobs on here, but they may have all kind of done that. So I'm wondering if there's some sort of error in the store function that's making it to where it's not being able to store anything that I want to create. If that's the issue, then there may be something wrong with what's going on up on this preamp board, and that might be a little bit outside my abilities and knowledge. So I'm going to read up on it a little bit more and see if I can get this thing to stop erroring out. And once I figure that part out of it, I will come back and we will see where everything stands with this. But for right now, I do have a quote-unquote working amp, just in the respect that I am able to get sound to come out of the speaker now. So that part of it's done. That part is good. I may actually save trying to figure out the rest of this for another video. So, that is what I'm going to do. We're going to say that this part of the video, because I knew I was going to separate this video into getting this part to work, and then like the rehab of the cabinet and all that was going to be another video. So right now, power amp is fixed on this. That's what this video is going to be about. I'll go ahead and we'll close out this video for right now. The next video I have hopefully will be the fixing of the preamp. And once that gets going, then I'll do the rehab on the cabinet. So until next time, thanks for joining me on this incredibly adventurous episode of Dave Tries to. Okay, so a couple of things. First, I took the battery out and tested the battery. Battery is putting out a little over 3 volts, and it's a 3-volt battery, so battery's fine. There's nothing wrong with the battery. But one thing I did, even after resetting everything to the factory settings, I actually put in adjusted everything on here, got it to a tone, if you will, with all the controls at a place where I know that the controls are functional and will work. And then I went to utilizing the instructions from the instruction manual, from the owner's manual. I went through the steps of trying to save it to that channel 11, which at first it appeared to be saving it correctly, but then after I took my finger off the store button, everything like the gain, which was up around, which is right about here on the setting, reset and went all the way back down to 0. And it's tough to see without the knobs on here, but they may have all kind of done that. So I'm wondering if there's some sort of error in the store function that's making it to where it's not being able to store anything that I want to create. If that's the issue, then there may be something wrong with what's going on up on this preamp board, and that might be a little bit outside my abilities and knowledge. So I'm going to read up on it a little bit more and see if I can get this thing to stop erroring out. And once I figure that part out of it, I will come back and we will see where everything stands with this. But for right now, I do have a quote-unquote working amp, just in the respect that I am able to get sound to come out of the speaker now. So that part of it's done. That part is good. I may actually save trying to figure out the rest of this for another video. So that is what I'm going to do. We're going to say that this part of the, because I knew I was going to separate this video into getting this part to work, and then like the rehab of the cabinet and all that was going to be another video. So right now, power amp is fixed on this. That's what this video is going to be about. I'll go ahead and we'll close out this video for right now. The next video I have hopefully will be the fixing of the preamp. And once that gets going, then I'll do the rehab on the cabinet. So until next time, thanks for joining me on this incredibly adventurous episode of Dave Tries to. Okay, so a couple of things. First, I took the battery out and tested the battery. Battery is putting out a little over 3 volts, and it's a 3-volt battery, so battery's fine. There's nothing wrong with the battery. But one thing I did, even after resetting everything to the factory settings, I actually put in adjusted everything on here, got it to a tone, if you will, with all the controls at a place where I know that the controls are functional and will work. And then I went to utilizing the instructions from the instruction manual, from the owner's manual. I went through the steps of trying to save it to that channel 11, which at first it appeared to be saving it correctly, but then after I took my finger off the store button, everything like the gain, which was up around, which is right about here on the setting, reset and went all the way back down to 0. And it's tough to see without the knobs on here, but they may have all kind of done that. So I'm wondering if there's some sort of error in the store function that's making it to where it's not being able to store anything that I want to create. If that's the issue, then there may be something wrong with what's going on up on this preamp board, and that might be a little bit outside my abilities and knowledge. So I'm going to read up on it a little bit more and see if I can get this thing to stop erroring out. And once I figure that part out of it, I will come back and we will see where everything stands with this. But for right now, I do have a quote-unquote working amp, just in the respect that I am able to get sound to come out of the speaker now. So that part of it's done. That part is good. I may actually save trying to figure out the rest of this for another video. So, that is what I'm going to do. We're going to say that this part of the, because I knew I was going to separate this video into getting this part to work, and then like the rehab of the cabinet and all that was going to be another video. So right now, power amp is fixed on this. That's what this video is going to be about. I'll go ahead and we'll close out this video for right now. The next video I have hopefully will be the fixing of the preamp, and once that gets going, then I'll do the rehab on the cabinet. So until next time, thanks for joining me on this incredibly adventurous episode of Dave Tries to